never worked a day in my life. Every opportunity to serve is a privilege. It's a privilege. It's a gift to be able to serve. And so that seeing your presence today, to be able to serve, thank you. Dr. Martin Luther King, the prophetic leaders of the 20th century, everybody can be great because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to know your subject and your verb degree to serve. You don't have to know the second, third, thermodynamics and physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. A heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. Isn't that a wonderful line for being in this place of grace? A heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. What King understand is that our lives together are predicated on the service of one another. And that's why it's called servant leadership. It seems every once in a while that it loses its focus because people want to always research leadership. And I'm saying, wait a minute, start with service. What does it mean to serve? And when we serve, we lead. And when we lead, we serve. They're not indistinguishable. Servant leadership has nothing to do with titles or privilege or prestige. It has everything to do with who is it that I can serve today. And Robert Greenleaf was a very wise man. He was a vice president at AT&T Corporation, was an engineer by trade, like Dick Pieper. And he paid close attention to details. He was a Quaker, so he didn't talk a lot. In fact, one of the things that he said is, I do not try to speak unless I can improve upon the silence. So he was a terrible interview, they said. You'd ask him a question and he'd respond with one or two words. So why would he be such a wonderful person to quote when we're talking about civility? He writes this: listening. I've had substantial involvement with listening. About 40 years ago when I was at AT&T, we made studies confirming that much disharmony in the organization was due to bosses not listening to the subordinates. We accepted that some of this was built into the role because those who emerge as managers are likely to be more assertive than most, and therefore not likely to be natural good listeners. So we put together a 3-day course on listening called Talking with People. In the end, we gave it to all 80,000 managers. This would not be an unusual thing today, but then it attracted quite a bit of notice. 80,000 managers. AT&T was the largest corporation in the world, and he began to recognize that those who were the most influential, inspiring, effective leaders were those people who took the time to listen to their people. So when we talk about civility, to give each other space and time just to listen. Listen, it has the same letters as the word silent. To be silent in each other's presence is an act of civility. To allow people to finish their sentence or their thought is an act of respect. To listen carefully and compassionately is to say, I love you.
That's beautiful, as always, Tom. I was really interested about the topic that we chose for this session on this city tour, the civility piece. One of the things that I love about servant leadership, really something that makes it easy for me to get behind servant leadership, is servant leadership allows me to be the same person at home with my kids, out in public with my friends, and in the workplace. It allows me to be my authentic self. It doesn't ask me to be something different in different places. The reason why the civility topic really kind of made me think is I use that term a lot at home with my boys. Can we just be civil? Can we just be civil at home? I have 3 boys, teenagers, and sometimes civility is not a part of our routine at moments at home. And to me, it's a low bar, right? When I say just be civil, that's a low bar. So I had to kind of dive a little bit deeper when I was preparing to share with you today. And one of the things that I found was a different definition of civility that resonated with me a little bit more. And it's beyond being polite and respectful. Civility also includes engaging in robust and respectful debate and actively listening to various viewpoints without attacking one's character.
Politics is a good word. It's the polis. What's the will of the people? Well, how do you know the will of the people unless you engage in public dialogue? A about the needs of the people. And that's what a leader has to do. And a leader has to have the courage to step into deep water. And that deep water oftentimes is contentious. So how do you hold the center? How do you hold your ground? How do you engage with people who have different perspectives than yourself? Dr. King had people wanting to kill him. And he continued to talk with them. This was not in the abstract. And a story from a friend of mine. He interviewed a man called Frank Evans. Frank Evans played baseball for Satchel Paige, and one night Frank Evans found himself in the middle of a Klan rally and they were going to lynch him. And one of the people said, "You're Frank Evans, you play for Satchel Paige." He said, "Yes, sir." So let that man go. And he got out of there. Never forgot that. When Dr. King started to march, Frank Evans joined him. And on a march, going through Memphis, they're walking and somebody threw a brick that hit Dr. King in the head, knocked him to his knees. Dr. King was on his all fours and he said to Frank, give me that rock. And they brought over the rock. He said, "This is a rock of righteousness." And he said, "Put your hand on that rock." And they all put their hand on the rock. And he said, "Dear God, touch the heart of the one who threw this rock, that they may know your gentleness and love, your power and your forgiveness." A man came out of the crowd, got down on his knees and said, "Dr. King, I'm so sorry." The power of our language, the power of the words that we have. With one word I can lift somebody up, I can tear them down. With one word I can honor somebody or I can humiliate them. Can we not agree that there's too much that's rude and crude? Confucius, 2,500 years ago, said this: "The rectification of a society begins with the reclamation of language." Let me repeat that. The rectification of a society begins with the reclamation of language. The way in which we talk to and with each other. To engage each other in conversations, not to destroy each other with our words. And that's what happens. And what I'm very concerned about is this. So we watch this on TV as adults and we can have some level in terms of boundaries. Do you not think that's filtering down to our children? Ask any parent who has their child in middle school, and they'll tell you how terrified they are of their child being targeted with language that's destructive and how difficult it is. You can't even protect them because of the things that come across on electronic. What do we do to our children if we do not speak with each other in civil, respectful ways in which we honor those, and particularly honor those that we may disagree with? Easy to say, difficult to do. But servant leadership never defined itself as being easy.
We changed the slide up on the PowerPoint to this one that at first glance it looks pretty simple, but it is not in any way, shape, or form simple. You can spend a lot of time studying what is on that slide and trying to really model what is on the right. Going back to the politics, it's interesting this fall. Cities Tour always seems to fall during some election that's upcoming, and I try to really think about civility in the workplace and what it means right now. Because, right, what we see on the news and every day, it's impossible for it to not impact us. It's virtually impossible to see the harsh language that's being used and for it to not resonate with us. And in a lot of ways, I think that it does transcend into our day-to-day. And we're in the middle of the Great Resignation, right? We've got people leaving workplaces because they're not feeling appreciated and they're not feeling valued. And servant leadership is a way to combat that. It's a way to bring a different environment. Servant leadership helps you as a leader make those around you feel appreciated and valued. And if we did that in our workplaces, and if we did that at home, and if kids at middle school were able to do that with each other, I don't know, is this a situation where we need to lead in a different direction? From what we see on TV, absolutely, it's challenging. There was one piece that I read that really resonated with me, that had 3 really great, kind of tangible ways to lead with servant leadership to create a more civil workplace. The first was to aspire to lead with love. I love that with servant leadership, you can talk about love and it's okay to talk about love, but the definition of this one helps people to understand that, because sometimes when we use that word and we talk about leadership, it can be a little bit scary for some people, and it doesn't feel right for some people. And in this definition, it was commit to doing good despite how you feel or how someone treats you. You're still going to take the high road. You're still going to treat others well, despite how they make you feel and despite what you feel about their values. Think of how that would look in a debate situation if we were approaching in that way. The other is practice active empathy. I think that's beautiful, and we talk about empathy a lot, but sometimes it's a tough thing to pinpoint and to know what that means. In this definition, it's having compassion for everyone and seeking out win-win situations. So understanding, not just putting yourself in someone else's shoes, but understanding their perspective so that you can create win-win situations. I think that the power that could bring into workplaces is pretty monumental. And then aim to lead with the right perspective, being willing to create a working environment that is peaceful despite differences in opinions. How many of you have been at meetings last week where there were differences of opinions? Were all those differences of opinions valued? Were they all heard? Were they all shared? Did we ask for them so that we could come to these? I think it ties very closely on the empathy side. But to me, these felt like very tangible ways and things, in a nuts and bolts discussion about servant leadership. And I see a lot of very familiar faces that you're long on your journey with this, but I also see some new faces, and I know that some people struggle when they hear about servant leadership. So I hope those pieces were helpful.
Civility. A sailing vessel, we call it Agape, sailing up the Red Sea, had a check into an industrial port. It was at the time that we were going to invade Iraq, and they all thought the American government was crazy, not the American people. And I'm checking into this industrial town. You walk down the street, and they just stare at you. You're in an airport, you sit down, they move to the other side of the room. That's the lack of civility, I guess, but no judgments. So I'm walking into a room, 103 degrees, walking down the streets, go this way, go that way, up these stairs. I finally find the right place. The waiting room is about a third the size of this room. 2 walls are full of offices with windows. One is obviously where I'm supposed to check in with my crew of 4, total of 4 of us. And I show my passport, and the lady sitting there, sitting at the desk, looking down at the table, and she kind of looks up a little bit. She looks over at the waiting room, and she didn't say a word. Okay, I go sit down. Wait 10 or 15 minutes, I come up to the window again. Never looks at me. Keeps her head down at the table. I come back a third time. So I hand her my passports. She looks at them. Boom, 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 boom. And then I say to her, Assalamu alaikum. Her whole body changes. She has this big, shining smile on her face, looks at me. And that's how I left. So when I was traveling through that part of the world, I had that phrase, which means slightly different in Indonesia than it does in Yemen than it does in Egypt. But it means something to the effect, peace be with you, or God be with you, or something like that. And just that little gesture, respect for her, make no judgments. Stay on the high ground. Tom, I'm going to let you wrap it up.
You have 3 minutes.
A word is dead when it is said, some say, I say, it just begins to live that day. Repeat, a word is dead. When it is said, some say, I say, it just begins to live that day. What's significant is that words are as powerful as love. They stay with us for a lifetime. So I think it's very difficult to be shouting and criticizing each other and then the others say, well, after the election we'll work together. Isn't it amazing? Have any of us ever said too much and listened too little? Have you ever had your words kind of out here and you want to kind of grab them and pull them back? But what's been said, it lives. The power of our language. And Greenleaf, the founder of Servant Leadership, paid very much attention to the power of language. In fact, he understood that a leader's most powerful tool are our words. The ability to persuade, to inspire, to comfort, and to be compassionate. Second, what's really important is empathy, but an empathetic imagination. Just previous to our conversation beginning, I had an opportunity to reconnect with Dick. And a year ago at this time, he lost his son-in-law to a battle with cancer. If I would say to Dick, oh, I can't imagine what you've experienced, what am I telling Dick? I don't care about you. I can't imagine. I have a son-in-law. I can't imagine what it must be like for a family in the midst of grief. Or when people looked at Uvalde, oh, I can't imagine what those families are. Yes, we can, but we don't want to. But that empathetic imagination really allows us to build bridges with people, to overcome difference, and to find common ground. And in that moment, our lives are changed. Servant leadership is a lifelong journey, and along the journey, each of us is being changed. And I think that's what's really exciting, exhilarating, challenging, and sometimes frightening. But how good it is to be in a room with people who believe in the common decency and commitment to a good greater than ourselves.
Thank you, Tom.